Greetings gamers, my name is Anto and today I want to show you how to make monsters for the 2024 edition of Dungeons & Dragons. This video is sponsored by My Mini Factory and the Pathfinder Quest Frontiers campaign, more on them later. Now ever since the 2024 version of the Monster Manual was released, I have people constantly asking me about how I make monsters for D&D now, so I thought I'd put together a video showing you how I go about doing that. There are two elements that go into making a monster, lore and mechanics. I don't want to focus on lore today, I just want to focus on the mechanics, so we're going to remake one of my existing monsters, the Void Screamer, and update it to the 2024 version of the rules. These aberrations come from the Void, a lightless dimension which acts as a wound at the heart of the cosmos. This realm of crushing darkness and relentless gloom is the antithesis of life, and the creatures that live there have one desire: end life as we know it. Now, Void Screamers are mage hunters. They are drawn to powerful sources of magic. They tear their way through the walls of reality to hunt for spellcasters so that they can drain the magic from their very bodies. Their signature features are their screams, which mechanically are represented by power words. And they also have powerful anti-magic abilities, as do all creatures of the Void, as the Void is the antithesis of magic. But before we get into any of that, we need to get the basic stat block sorted. Today's video is sponsored by My Mini Factory and the Pathfinder Quest Frontiers campaign, which is running on their site right now. This campaign brings Pathfinder characters and monsters to home 3D printing for the first time in a collaboration between Paizo and Titanforge. You can grab a selection of the iconic Pathfinder heroes as well as a variety of ancestries for making your own heroes, including all the ancestries from the player core. And you can also pick up two different monster packs. The monster set has a selection of classic monsters like skeletons, zombies, wolves, bears, and then includes some awesome looking centerpiece models like the Obsidian Behemoth and the Time Dragon. Or you can grab the Hellfire set, which is packed with infernal minis like the Hell Knights, as well as an awesome Diabolic Dragon. You can also pick up PDFs of the Pathfinder core books and adventures as part of the campaign, or you can just grab the models on their own in their own individual tier. The campaign is already fully funded and running until October the 18th, so check it out at a link in the description below, and thanks again to My Mini Factory for supporting the channel. And to do that, we're going to use my quick monster builder. This is made by taking the 500 plus monsters in the new monster manual, averaging out their stats and putting it into a table. And I have a whole video on the methodology behind this process, which I'll leave linked up here. To start with, we're going to just port the numbers from the monster builder into our stat block for a CR14 creature, which is what the Void Screamer is going to be when we are finished. And we're just going to take those straight numbers and plug them straight into our stat block. This gives us a proficiency of +5, +10 initiative, an AC of 18, HP of 245, an attack bonus of 11, 3 attacks per round, dealing 112 damage when you factor in legendary actions as well, and a save DC of 17. From here, we want to start pushing and pulling numbers and making this monster make sense. Our basic stat array for a CR14 monster is modifiers of +6, 5, 4, 4, 2, and 2. And you can move these around however you want, and you can move them up and down as you'll see as we go along with this process. Now I know I want this monster's saving throws to be wisdom based, so I'm going to start by putting the +5 into wisdom. And then we'll put the +6 into strength because I want this to be a creature that can tear you limb from limb. Now intuitively, I know that this is a monster that's going to be relying on natural armor and not worn armor, so its dexterity needs to be quite high. And given that I can't dump dex, it means I'm going to have to put one of the +4s into dexterity. Now, I don't like to stack all of the mental or physical stats with strong stats. I like to put one of the weaker stats into each bracket. So we're going to put one of those +2s into Constitution so that there is a weaker element among the physical stats. Now I want these monsters to have a cruel intelligence, so we're going to put the other +4 into intelligence, and then that leaves us with our final +2, which will go into charisma. Next, it's a matter of figuring out the monster's saving throws. Now there's two approaches you can take with this, broadly speaking. You can either choose to play to the monster's existing strengths, so give it saving throw proficiencies in the things it's already good in, or choose to shore up its weaknesses, so give it saving throw proficiencies in its weaker abilities. The benefits of doing the former and buffing its strengths is you leave a really weak element that the players can exploit. The downside of this is you leave a really weak element that the players can exploit, and if that weak element is a mental stat, then they're almost certainly going to exploit it through some kind of save or sex spell that can shut down the combat immediately. So I prefer to put the saving throw proficiencies in the monster's natural weaknesses to bring them up to a baseline to make it so that the monster's less likely to just automatically fail against something like a hold monster or a similar save or sex spell, and they have a chance to actually do something in combat. Of course, if you're going to use a monster that has legendary resistances, this gives you some baked in protection against that, but I still do prefer to give them a kind of natural baseline of defense against this. Which means that I'm going to put the saving proficiencies for the Void Screamer into Constitution and Charisma, which makes for a decently hardy save across the board. There's no obvious gaps that are going to be able to be easily exploited for like a one-hit wonder from the players, but it does mean that it doesn't have any standout saves. It means it has a pretty equal chance of saving any of its saves. From here, I usually move on to hit points, which is determined by the monster's hit dice and its constitution modifier. The hit dice is set by the creature's size, and as Void Screamers are large, this is going to be a D10. To calculate this, I'll go to 5ehp.com. I'll leave a link to that down in the description below, and I just plug in the die size and the con modifier, and then just keep clicking up until I get to the kind of HP bracket that I want. We're aiming for around 245 here, so 32 D10 plus con gets us to 240, which is about perfect. Next, I add any abilities that the monster has. Now, I know I want this creature to have some legendary resistances, but I also want it to have magic resistance to play into that idea that creatures from the void are inherently kind of anti-magic creatures. They absorb magic. I think of void creatures as being the physical embodiment of that blackest black paint. You know, that paint that's so black that it just absorbs the light. They are that in creature form, and the magic is the light. Any magic that comes into contact with them, they just kind of absorb it into nothingness. Whether it sustains them or not, that's a whole different thing, but I want them to have magic resistance. Then comes the process of adding actions to the monster. Now, this is going to vary monster to monster, but my general process is making sure all my important monsters have some kind of bonus action and reaction so they can use the full gamut of the action economy. So that is usually where I will start. For bonus action, I gave the Void Screamer 3 castings of Misty Step to allow it to get around the battlefield and not be bogged down. And then I gave it the Void Scream ability. This is an anti-magic emanation, and it's very similar to the way that the Beholder's anti-magic emanation works. And this is where my new ability list that I've recently added to my quick monster builder comes in really handy. This is a list of every single unique ability that every monster in the monster manual has listed out so that I can easily reference it for understanding how the text of a specific ability is written. So I can go, oh, are there any monsters that are able to like use their minions as shields or something similar? Look at my list of reference abilities, and I can see that the Goblin Boss has a reaction that allows them to redirect attacks onto allies. I could add something similar to that and have the syntax of how that rule is written to draw from when I'm writing my own rule. For reactions, I gave the Screamer an ability that triggers when it becomes bloody. It lets out this piercing scream that mechanically is a casting of power word kill if it has one available. This is representing those death throws, the monster becoming more dangerous the closer to death it becomes. For basic actions, it has the standard kind of claw and bite, but then I also gave it access to a couple of spells. I could have spun off the power words into a complete list of bespoke abilities, but given that the power words exist as spells, I thought I'd stick with spellcasting as a mechanic. It allows them to be counterspelled, it gives the players more interplay with that, and then it means that I can also give the monster a couple of additional spells that fit the flavor. The first of these is going to be Dispel Magic, that idea that this is an anathema to magic creature, so it can dispel magic. And then also darkness. This is a creature that has blind sight and does not need to see, so fighting in darkness is an advantage to it. And it was while making the basic actions that I ran into a problem. The creature's strength is currently +6, so the DC for its grapple ability would be 19, which is quite a bit higher than the 17 recommended in our quick monster builder. And given that the Void Screamer is already hitting pretty hard in terms of damage, it can cast power word level spells and it can utilize the whole action economy, I felt that this was probably too much. So instead, I dropped the strength down to a +5, which reduced the DC down to an 18, which matches its spellcasting DC and keeps that nice and even. Now, because the offensive stats of the monster are so high, I knew that I wanted to bring the defenses down a little bit. The HP is already a tiny bit lower, but that's not really too much of a concern. It's something that can be adjusted on the fly as you're running the monster if needs be. And then the initiative also ended up at +9 instead of +10 because of the dexterity modifier. So that only really leaves us with armor class. So I reduced the Screamer's AC down to 17, so that it's a little bit easier to hit than other creatures in its CR bracket, which kind of makes up for how hard it hits. Then the last mechanical thing to do was add some legendary actions to the Screamer. I chose to go with 3 here. A lot of the creatures in the book have 3 as standard, or 4 if they're in their lair. Now, I consider the Screamer's lair to be the Void, and I don't envision any players ever go in there, and if they do, they're going to have much bigger problems than just fighting a single Void Screamer, so I decided to keep it at a flat 3 legendary actions, and I chose to give it 1 move and claw attack as part of its legendary action, and then given that this thing is like 90% mouth, I had to give it some kind of devour action. So if it grapples someone with its claws, it can use a legendary action to try and devour them. If it is successful and reduces the creature to 0 HP, it instantly kills them, drains the magic from their body, and regains a casting of Power Word. There are several monsters in the new monster manual that have this kind of mechanical interaction where they can do a very niche kind of action that if they reduce a creature to 0 hit points in doing so, they instantly kill it. So I wasn't too worried about the wording and the mechanics of this, and I felt that it recharging its Power Word abilities by doing this is great flavor for it absorbing magic from other creatures. Finally, I added a line of gear to its stat block for its larynx. So if you're able to kill a Void Screamer and harvest its larynx, that is going to be worth 2,000 gold pieces. Just a nice reward for fighting the monster. And with that, our Void Screamer is finished and updated to the 2024 D&D rules. This is a powerful CR14 monster that any player should rightly fear. Now this puppy hits slightly harder than average. It does 115 damage on average in a round instead of the typical 112 that is average for a CR14 creature. But with its combination of power words and its anti-magic field, as well as its legendary actions, it really is a monster that should be feared. In my own setting, I have a rule that whenever you cast spells of a certain level, you have a risk of drawing a Void Screamer from the void. I represent this through a casting of 6th level spells, because these don't come online until 11th level, and that is the perfect kind of starting level to be fighting this type of creature. So it means that if you do cast a 6th level spell, and the unlikely event that you do roll up a Void Screamer and it tears its way into reality, it's going to be somewhat of a fair fight, because what I don't want to happen is a level 3 party summoning a Void Screamer and them getting absolutely cooked. So there you have it. That is my process for making monsters for the 2024 version of D&D. If you want to get your hands on the Void Screamer, including its stat block, lore, and a bunch of tables for running it in your games, you can get it in my monthly newsletter absolutely free. I'll leave a link to sign up for that down in the description below. And when you sign up, you'll also get access to my GM toolkit, which is going to have that quick monster builder and the list of abilities in there as well. But until next time, happy gaming.